my decisions would not be binding but for the fact that it is the litigants sign a binding arbitration agreement.
After nearly 3 decades of slamming her gavel and staring down America's boldest liars, Judge Judy has officially seen it all. But at 82 years old, television's most legendary legal powerhouse isn't just looking back at petty drama.
So he has to be compensated for that. That's his property. He can't get it out because there's an impediment to it. But the reason that the gun is there is because of you.
She's naming the absolute worst of the worst. From remorseless scammers targeting the vulnerable to toxic litigants who weaponized family loyalty for a quick buck. These aren't your run-of-the-mill courtroom squabbles. This is a definitive countdown of the most manipulative, cold-hearted, and genuinely evil defendants to ever set foot in front of Judge Judy. From Manhattan Family Court to Daytime Queen, the Judge Judy blueprint. Long before she became the Grand Master of daytime television, Judge Judy was just a kid from Brooklyn named Judith Susan Blum, with a razor-sharp mind and zero tolerance for nonsense. To really understand how she became the ultimate courtroom executioner, you have to realize that her legendary show wasn't just cooked up by TV executives looking for drama. It was the result of decades spent in the trenches of the New York legal system, dealing with actual criminals, toxic family feuds, and people who genuinely thought they could outsmart the law. Let's break down exactly how this Brooklyn girl built an empire, and then dive into some of the absolute clowns who thought they could test her. Imagine walking into a law school classroom in the early 1960s as a woman. Now imagine being the only woman in a room packed with 125 men. That was Judy at American University's Washington College of Law. She eventually finished her degree at New York Law School in 1965, passed the bar, and tried out the corporate life at a cosmetics firm. She hated it. Within 2 years, she traded the corporate ladder for full-time motherhood, taking time off to raise her 2 kids, Jamie and Adam. But Judy wasn't meant to stay away from the action for long. By 1972, a law school buddy clued her in on an opening in the New York court system, and she jumped right into the deep end as a prosecutor for the family court system. This wasn't glamorous work. She was prosecuting juvenile crime, domestic violence, and heartbreaking child abuse cases. It was heavy, emotionally draining stuff, but it proved to the world that she was an absolute machine who could handle the darkest sides of human nature without flinching. All that success at work came with a massive bill at home, though. The grueling hours and emotional toll strained her personal life, leading her to leave her first husband in 1976 after 12 years of marriage. But the universe works in funny ways. Just 3 months after her divorce, she met an attorney named Jerry Schindlin. They tied the knot in 1978, and Judy kept climbing the legal ladder. By 1982, New York City Mayor Ed Koch noticed her reputation as a no-nonsense powerhouse and appointed her as a family court judge. On the bench, she perfected the exact formula we see on TV today: immense sympathy for the vulnerable, mixed with utter contempt for anyone trying to lie to her face. By 1986, she was the supervising judge of Manhattan's Family Court Division. Life threw a major wrench in things in 1990 when her father passed away. The grief shook her world so hard that she and Jerry actually divorced. But you can't keep a good match down. A year later, feeling lonely and realizing their massive blended family, which now included 5 kids and 2 grandkids, needed to be whole, they got remarried. With her personal life back on solid ground, the media finally caught wind of this legendary judge. In 1993, the Los Angeles Times wrote a massive profile framing her as a real-life legal superhero. That article caught the eye of the legendary news program 60 Minutes, which ran a feature segment on her. Once that aired, Hollywood came knocking. Television executive Larry Little saw her raw, unedited charisma and filmed a pilot. In 1996, after 25 years and over 20,000 cases in family court, Judy officially retired from the state system to launch Judge Judy in national syndication. The show didn't just succeed, it killed the competition. By 1999, it was the #1 syndicated show on television, pulling in 7 million viewers a week and beating out Oprah in major cities like New York. It single-handedly created an entire genre, paving the way for shows like Judge Joe Brown and Judge Mathis. For 25 years, over 10 million people tuned in daily to watch Judy hand out verbal beatdowns to people who desperately deserved them. And speak of the devil, let's talk about two of the classic cases that remind us exactly why millions watched her put delusional citizens in their place. Take the case of a guy named Mitchell Ergenson. He sued a restaurant owner for vandalism, and technically, he actually had a legitimate legal grievance. But instead of focusing on the actual crime, Mitchell spent the first few minutes of his time on national television complaining that the restaurant had once forgotten to give him salad dressing, and he felt he deserved a free meal because he couldn't eat his sandwich dry. Judy sat there, showing a level of restraint that felt genuinely miraculous, listening to a grown man whine about condiments. While Mitchell technically walked away with a legal win for the vandalism, Judy made sure he paid for it in sheer embarrassment, letting the entire room laugh him right out of the courtroom. He got his money, but he traded his dignity for it. From rigor mortis stew to the infamous Tupperware attack. If there is one golden rule in Judy's courtroom, it's respect. You don't have to wear a three-piece tuxedo, but you should probably show up looking like you care.
I'll tell you a cute story about consequences. I don't think I've told you this story before.
In this infamous case, the defendant openly mocked the idea of dressing up, calling a shirt and tie fake. To prove just how real her camp was, her husband, who was appearing as a witness, walked onto the set wearing a t-shirt that proudly declared, "Beer equals fun." Instead of looking edgy or rebellious, the husband's smug attitude combined with the defendant's bizarre rants just made the entire room feel intensely awkward. Trying to out-attitude the most intimidating judge on television while dressed for a backyard kegger went exactly as poorly as you'd think, proving once again that when you walk into Judy's house, you either play by her rules or get chewed up and spit out for the world's entertainment. Family ties are completely thrown out the window when roadkill enters the equation, leading to one of the most bizarre sisterly feuds ever broadcast. When a defendant named Carol Dettenheim smashed her sister's car into a deer, she decided to skip the insurance company and go straight to the kitchen, processing the animal into a home-cooked dinner. Her sister, the plaintiff Eve Dettenheim, dragged her to court for the car damages and proudly declared on the witness stand that she completely rejected her invite to the dinner table because she wanted absolutely no part of Carol's rigor mortis stew. Carol took massive, deeply offended insult to the culinary critique, and the most unsettling part of the entire exchange was that both sisters argued about the freshness of roadkill venison with completely straight, deadpan faces. To them, this was just a standard Tuesday night. But for Judge Judy and the rest of the world, it was absolute courtroom comedy gold. If the roadkill sisters kept their cool, the next plaintiff did the exact opposite, delivering a performance that belonged in a terrible daytime soap opera. Caroline Fawcett brought a case to the bench regarding room and board fees for a leased horse, expecting a quick and easy victory. Instead, Judy looked at the facts, found them lacking, and handed down a swift, merciless ruling against her. The second the gavel hit, Caroline launched into a display so severe it looked like she was suffering a medical emergency, clutching her chest and collapsing over her podium, as if she were taking her final breath. While she hyperventilated and moaned for the cameras, the studio audience behind her could do nothing but cringe into their seats at the second-hand embarrassment, leaving a permanent legacy of the most over-the-top reaction in daytime television history. But you can't talk about dramatic courtroom performances without bowing down to a true internet legend, the Tupperware Lady. A plaintiff named Karina Roy stood before the bench to recount an alleged assault, which she decided to bring to life through a wildly animated, aggressively physical reenactment of a savage Tupperware attack. Karina began violently slashing the air, lunging forward, and pointing her fingers like a weapon to show just how dangerous the plastic storage containers could be. The absurdity of trying to frame a piece of leftover Savor Tupperware as a deadly, traumatic weapon had the entire studio audience actively choking back laughter. Judy, however, sat there with a face made of stone, completely unamused by the choreography and silently reminding everyone that the only person allowed to yell and point fingers in that room is the woman wearing the black robe. As funny as plastic container battles can be, the top spot belongs to a case so monstrously cold-hearted it left the entire nation completely speechless. A plaintiff named Wendy Moore allowed her 14-year-old son to take her car out for a drive with a friend, resulting in a horrific car wreck that tragically unalived the other teenager. Instead of grieving or reflecting on her own massive failure as a parent, Wendy decided the most logical next step was to sue the dead girl's mourning mother for the car damages and medical bills. She stood before the bench with a chilling lack of sympathy, showing zero guilt or basic human decency for the tragedy her own vehicle caused. Judy was so physically repulsed by the woman's unfeeling attitude that she didn't just dismiss the case, she completely laid into Wendy with a legendary tongue lashing before slapping her with a maximum $5,000 judgment on a counterclaim, sending a horrific bully packing with absolutely nothing but public disgrace. The infamous losers meme that enraged Judge Judy. Sometimes, a case is so beautifully, utterly simple that a toddler could figure it out. But some litigants still manage to trip over their own feet. Take the infamous case of a destroyed phone, where Judge Judy, trying to show just how basic the facts were, asked a classic rhetorical question about rocket science. Instead of just nodding along like a normal person, a witness took the question completely literally and actually started explaining the mechanics of rocket science to the bench. She stood there with the absolute confidence of a Miss USA contestant, totally convinced she was being helpful, while the entire courtroom absolutely imploded with laughter. Once the witness realized everyone was laughing at her, she actually started second-guessing her own space travel knowledge. It was a sweet, deeply misguided attempt to assist, but Judy didn't need a NASA refresher course. She just needed people to stop being dense. If that witness was accidentally hilarious, the next defendant was just an absolute grammatical train wreck. Judge Judy has a built-in radar for youthful entitlement, and she locked onto a young woman who was being grilled over a nasty altercation with the plaintiff. When asked to justify her behavior, the defendant confidently sneered that the plaintiff and his friends were nothing but a bunch of losers. Yes, with a D. The sheer innovation of inventing a brand new insult on national television did not win her any points with the bench, and her poor mother looked like she wanted to melt right into the courtroom floor from pure embarrassment. To make matters worse, the girl kept running her mouth outside the courtroom during the post-show interview, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just turned herself into a permanent internet meme. But hey, at least that girl didn't try to pull the ultimate internet scam of the century. Enter Kelly Filkins, an eBay seller with a level of audacity that belongs in a museum. A frustrated buyer sued Filkins after winning an auction for 2 cell phones, only to open the delivery box and find 2 printed, pixelated photographs of the phones instead of the actual devices. While her husband conveniently chickened out of showing up to court, Filkins stood before Judge Judy and aggressively argued that the buyer should have known that a $400 bid was clearly just for the paper prints. It was completely unhinged behavior. Judy didn't just reject the defense, she absolutely tore into Filkins for being a textbook con artist. The entire defense went off the rails in seconds, proving that you can try to scam people on the internet, but you cannot scam the woman with the gavel. As wild as the eBay scam was, the next pair of defendants practically handcuffed themselves. Judy probably expected a standard, messy, he said, she said dispute when a plaintiff accused 2 men of stealing her wallet. But as the plaintiff started listing off the items that went missing inside the wallet, one of the co-defendants decided to be a helpful citizen and interrupted to blurt out, "There wasn't an earpiece in that wallet." The entire room froze. He had absolutely no idea that he had just confessed to the crime by proving he knew exactly what was inside the stolen goods. Judy was so amused by the confession that she couldn't even summon her usual anger. It was one of the fastest, most hysterical rulings in daytime TV history. She slammed her gavel before the 2 even realized they had talked themselves right into a judgment. We have a hilariously brief battle between 2 former roommates that proves tears will get you absolutely nowhere. The plaintiff's case was dismissed almost immediately, and right on cue, she turned on the waterworks, sobbing hysterically in hopes of a sudden rewrite. Clearly, she had never watched a single episode of the show before, because crying to Judge Judy is like throwing water on a grease fire. The absolute comedy highlight, though, was her overdramatic friend who rushed over to cradle and comfort her as if she had just survived a major natural disaster rather than a minor civil dispute. Considering how brutal Judy can get when her time is wasted by petty roommate drama, the crying plaintiff got off incredibly easy, even if she had to leave the studio empty-handed. The giggling, defiant driver who smirked at Judge Judy. Show up in a nice shirt all you want, but if you enter Judge Judy's courtroom acting like you're still at the pregame, you are going to get absolutely torn apart. That is exactly what happened to a defendant who thought a drunken night out resulting in a wrecked car was the funniest story on earth. This guy could not stop giggling, snickering, and losing his place while trying to explain how he smashed up the plaintiff's vehicle. He was so completely out of it that he couldn't even grasp the baseline questions Judy was throwing at him. While we can't legally diagnose what kind of substances might have been fueling his courtroom comedy routine, Judy was not amused. She dropped a few heavy verbal anchors right on his head, wiped that goofy smirk off his face, and handed down a swift ruling against him before he could even figure out where the exit was. Speaking of people who completely lack self-awareness, let's talk about why mothers-in-law get such a terrible reputation. A plaintiff in an infamous family dispute proved that sometimes the stereotypes are dead on. She dragged her ex-daughter-in-law to court, but it took Judy about 3 seconds to realize that the plaintiff was actually a professional pot stirrer who thrived on family chaos. Instead of behaving like an adult, this woman fought the judge on every single point, completely refusing to accept that her own toxic behavior caused the drama in the first place. But you don't out-argue the master. When Judy realized this woman was completely immune to logic, she didn't waste her breath. She delivered a parting shot so cold, it left the woman standing in silence as Judy marched off the bench. If that mother-in-law was stubborn, the next guy was flat-out suicidal. There is a very fine line between being confident and having a fresh mouth, and one particular defendant crossed that line straight into a legal wood chipper. This man, who proudly claimed to have 10 children, decided the best way to win over one of the most powerful women in television history was to make a borderline nonsensical, highly inappropriate joke about Judy's own daughter. The second the words left his mouth, a bone-chilling silence fell over the entire room. Instead of backing down, the guy actually tried to double down on his terrible punchline. What makes this moment legendary is how Judy didn't even yell. She kept her total composure while surgically dismantling his entire existence. By the time she ruled against him, the studio audience literally broke into spontaneous applause, celebrating the fact that a massive ego had just been publicly popped. And don't think for a second that you're safe just because you're sitting in the back row. One unfortunate audience member learned the hard way that the rules of gravity apply to everyone in Judy's universe. During a case, this guy let out a laugh that was just a little too loud and a little too disruptive for the front bench's liking. Judy stopped the entire proceeding, locked eyes with him, and banished him from the room on the spot. The poor guy looked totally shocked, deeply confused, and stuttering out an apology that nobody cared to hear. It didn't matter. He was escorted out, and Judy seamlessly pivoted right back to the case without skipping a single beat. It was a stark, hilarious reminder to everyone watching at home. The only person allowed to command the room in that courtroom is the woman holding the gavel. The infamous broken toilet lawsuit, Lisa Reed versus her houseguest. Some litigants try to lie with a straight face, but it's a whole different level of delusion when you try to lie directly over high-definition video evidence. In a deeply uncomfortable case, a defendant brought in a clip that showed the plaintiff furiously kicking down a door and physically wresting a phone out of her hands. It was open and shut, violent, and plain as day. Yet, even as the footage played for the entire room, the offending woman stood there denying the whole thing, her anger visibly boiling over toward the defendant and Judge Judy herself. But you don't intimidate the boss. Judy simply rolled her eyes, ordered the bailiff to play the video again, and forced everyone to watch the meltdown on repeat, serving up a masterclass in what happens when you let a trashy temper ruin your legal standing. If that case was tense, the next one was just an absolute masterclass in petty warfare. You have to be a truly special breed of vindictive to drag your own friend onto national television because your toilet cracked, but that is exactly what a plaintiff named Lisa Reed did. Her entire legal argument rested on the fact that her friend happened to be the last person to sit on the porcelain throne before it broke. The absolute absurdity of trying to financially blame a houseguest for a plumbing casualty had the entire audience stifling giggles. Lisa stood there with pure, unearned arrogance, completely convinced she was about to get a payday. Instead, Judy took one look at the ridiculous claim and completely clowned her, turning the plaintiff into the ultimate courtroom laughingstock. But if you think a broken toilet is a wild piece of evidence, you haven't seen a doctor bust out an interpretive dance mid-testimony. While presenting his case, a highly professional and serious man named Dr. Noel Howell was keeping things completely respectful, until he had to describe the defendant's drunken behavior on the night in question. Without warning, the doctor launched into a full-blown, physically animated impression of the defendant's intoxicated antics, complete with hilarious dancing and high-pitched screeching. The courtroom absolutely erupted into hysterics, and even the doctor's own witness couldn't keep a straight face. Judy, however, immediately shut down the Broadway audition. She doesn't do dramatic reenactments. She just wants the cold, hard facts, even if the live performance was pure gold. Judy usually likes to keep her courtroom family-friendly, but one particular plaintiff forced the show into mature audiences-only territory. When asked to describe her business, the plaintiff proudly explained that she ran an adult novelty company, unleashing a wave of highly suggestive product names that made the entire audience squirm in their seats. The absolute peak of disgust hit when she casually mentioned that one of the intimate items had been returned by a customer without being cleaned. Judy literally buried her face in her hands, completely grossed out, while the rest of us learned way more about adult toys than we ever bargained for. Whether Judy genuinely didn't know what the business was, or she just knew the explanation would make legendary television, it was a wildly uncomfortable, unforgettable moment. We also have a roommate dispute that pivoted from standard daytime drama into a genuinely alarming horror story. A woman dragged her former roommate to court, claiming the roommate had literally poured boiling water all over her while she was asleep. The plaintiff tried to play the role of the innocent victim, repeatedly denying that drugs were involved, but her own medical records completely blew her cover. To make things even more chaotic, she kept rambling and accusing the responding cop of being a Fugazi officer, leaving Judy thoroughly confused. But as the true nature of the woman's injuries and substance use came to light, the mood in the room shifted. Judy dropped her usual harshness and showed genuine concern, bluntly telling the woman that if she hadn't been under the influence that night, the police actually could have arrested the monster who hurt her. The life-saving scam that triggered Judge Judy's atomic wrath. If there is one group of people you absolutely do not mess with in Judy's world, it is the elderly. One slick-talking predator found this out the hard way after he managed to swindle a vulnerable, cognitively declining older man out of his entire life savings, all while pretending to be a helpful guy, just looking out for his affairs. When forced to look Judge Judy in the eye and explain where all those thousands of dollars went, the defendant didn't even blink. He stood there with a straight face and claimed the cash was just a gift to thank him for his wonderful companionship. The sheer audacity of the lie caused Judy to bypass her usual witty sarcasm and head straight for total atomic annihilation. She launched into a blistering monologue that surgically ripped his character to shreds, leaving the man visibly shaking at his podium and proving that while the civil law has financial limits, her honor's wrath absolutely does not. But if cheating an elder is sickening, betraying your own deceased brother's grieving family takes toxic greed to a whole new level. Following the tragic passing of her sibling, a woman managed to intercept his life insurance payout, completely hiding the cash from his destitute widow and young children who were actively struggling to pay rent. Instead of helping her own flesh and blood, this sister immediately went on a luxury shopping spree and bought herself a brand new car. When confronted with her cruelty in court, she didn't show remorse. She actually stood there and smiled. The temperature in that room dropped to sub-zero instantly. Judy utterly obliterated the woman's smug entitlement, famously telling her that if you looked up shame in the dictionary, her picture would be right there, before hammering down the maximum judgment before the fraud could even finish her next sentence. Of course, if you want a one-way ticket to a public television execution, involving helpless animals will do the trick every single time. A serial scammer thought she could make a quick buck by running a horrific puppy mill, breeding severely ill dogs in terrible conditions, forging fake veterinary records, and selling them to unsuspecting, hopeful families for thousands of dollars. When the heartbroken buyers tried to call her because their new puppies were tragically dying, she just blocked their numbers, and her actual defense in court was a cold buyer beware. To make it worse, she tried to squeeze out fake tears to play the victim on the stand. Judy saw right through the theatrical performance, famously barking her legendary line, "Don't pee on my leg, and tell me it's raining," before slamming her gavel down so hard it nearly splintered the wood into toothpicks. Finally, we have a defendant who earned a permanent spot in television purgatory by weaponizing the ultimate human tragedy: cancer. This woman faked a terminal illness to crowdsource thousands of dollars from her closest childhood friends, raking in donations and taking luxury tropical vacations under the guise of completing her bucket list, while her community wept for her. In reality, she was completely healthy and just wanted a lifestyle upgrade. When her former best friend figured out the scam and sued to get the money back, the defendant tried to smugly hide behind medical privacy laws to dodge the truth. But Judy has seen every single trick in the book. She forced the woman to produce actual medical documentation right then and there, and when the fraud came up completely empty-handed, the courtroom witnessed a takedown so brutal and clinical, it should have required a parental advisory warning. What do you think of these wild courtroom showdowns? Was the beer equals fun shirt the ultimate fashion disaster? Or did the fake cancer scam make your blood boil the most? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more ultimate countdowns. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You're going to enjoy it.